Hello, it's your buddy, it's your pal. I'm Karnak, and this is Star Wars Armada Explained. We're going to be looking at the upgrade card Hyperspace Rings today. So, Hyperspace Rings is a card that is for the Galactic Army of the Republic. You can tell that if you look at the bottom right hand corner of the card, you'll see the GAR faction specific symbol there next to its point cost. This card is 3 points. Hyperspace Rings, you can see it's got the title up there in the middle. It equips to the offensive retrofit slot. You can tell that by looking at the bottom left-hand corner of the card. So Hyperspace Rings, it reads, before deploying fleets, you may choose a number of friendly, non-rogue squadrons up to your squadron value. Those squadrons gain Scout. So, what is Scout and how does Hyperspace Rings work and how does this all come together? We'll get into that. The first thing I'm going to cover is how does the actual card effect itself works, and then we'll cover the keyword of Scout for Squadron, so you understand how that mechanic works. Okay, so Hyperspace Rings. Let's say that, for example, this Acclimator has equipped Hyperspace Rings. So it has a Squadron value of 3. So when it comes time to when you're wanting to use the card, you would be able, when it says you may choose a number, you could choose any number of, 0 of up to 3 then. Obviously, if you can modify the squadron value of an acclimator, like if you equip expanded hangar bays, and you can also have hyperspace rings, obviously then you could choose up to 4 squadrons. Also note that you need to be choosing non-rogue squadrons. So the GAR doesn't have any rogue squadrons yet in Clone Wars. Could they possibly get rogue squadrons in the future? Sure. If they did, you wouldn't be able to choose any squadron that has the keyword rogue. But you are able to choose all of the current squadrons that are in the game, and that includes uniques and not unique. So, like, for example, if I wanted to choose Anakin Skywalker and 2 ARC 170s to be the up to 3 value there that I want to have hyperspace rings, I could choose all 3 of those ships, and they would gain Scout. So one thing I do want to note that the timing of hyperspace rings is before deploying fleets. So again, we're just going to step through this real quick. So you've put down all the obstacles on the board. Okay, so all the obstacles are down. Let's just check out the standard ones just out here real fast. Great. So before anyone actually puts any ships on the table, you say, I've got hyperspace rings here. I can choose, 3 squadrons, and they will be able to gain Scout. So you say, okay, I'm going to have Anakin Skywalker and these 2 ARC 170s. They're all going to gain Scout. So, that's something that you need to figure out a way to make sure that your opponent knows and that you know what squadrons have Scout or don't have Scout, so you're not accidentally mixing up. What some players will commonly do is they'll just kind of scoop up the squadrons and just place them on the card as a reminder that, by the way, these squadrons have Scout, so you don't forget and your opponent doesn't forget, and also so your opponent can just see very easily what you've selected. So that's a typical common courtesy that most players agree upon. But whatever your opponent prefers or you would like to do, just make sure you're being communicative. Okay, so what's Scout and how does all of this work? One thing I want to make sure I'm just touching on the KARM real quick, make sure I didn't miss anything. So again, yes, this is in the before deployed fleet step of setup. You choose the squadrons, they'll get Scout. Again, if a ship also has something like expanded hangar bay or some other ability to increase their squadron count, they can choose additional squadrons. And again, we can choose unique or non-unique squadrons to gain Scout. And now we need to go to the rule reference guide on the Scout keyword. So what is the Scout keyword? So the Scout's keyword is, while deploying fleets, you can be placed outside of deployment zones and do not need to be at distance 1 to 2 of a friendly ship, but must be placed beyond distance 1 to 5 of enemy ships or squadrons. And you'll see in here that I have a note that says, note, squadrons of Scout must still be deployed within the setup area, and squadrons of Scout can be placed in your opponent's deployment zone. You may deploy 2 squadrons of Scout before deploying your ships. So some of these things, some people will be like, what does all this mean? So we're gonna just step through it again real quick. We'll bring up our thing here. So again, before putting anything on the board, we declared whom has Scout. We're going to say again these 3 squadrons here. All right. So let's say that you're first player. So as first player, you could choose 2 squadrons with scout, and essentially you can place them anywhere in the setup area. What is the setup area? So these 2 vertical lines here, anything within those 2 lines is considered the setup area. The whole mat is considered the play area. But when we are in deployment, we're restricted to what is the setup area, which is in between the 2 vertical lines. And then that's further split into deployment zones. Each player's deployment zone in other areas that might be referenced depending on what objective that you're playing. So what it's saying, you can deploy squadrons in the setup area. Again, it's everything in between the 2 vertical lines. That's where you're restricted to. You wouldn't be able to place 2 squadrons like outside of that area still. And you can place them anywhere. You can place them in your opponent's deployment zone if you'd like. I don't really recommend that, but if that's something you want to do, go for it. You can place these 2. Again, this is if you're first player. We'll touch on if you're second player in a second. You can place them, if you want to place one there or one over there, that's what Scout allows you to do. Again, it's while you're deploying fleets, you can place them outside of deployment zones. And you do not need to be at the normal restriction of distance 1 to 2 of a friendly ship. And again, I want to make sure I'm specifying that if you wanted to place 2 scout squadrons first before any ships, this is the only time you can do that, is if they have scout. Because the standard rules is squadrons can only be at distance 1 to 2 of a ship. Scout is ignoring that. It's overruling that, saying, hey, you don't have that restriction. So some players have been using hyperspace rings to put down squadrons before they put down any ships as kind of a deployment information advantage. Forces their opponent to put down things before you have to in terms of ships. But again, remember that there's that restriction of you must be placed beyond distance 1 to 5 of enemy ships or squadrons. So for example, instead of being first player and being allowed to put my 2 guys wherever I would like, if this player was first player, the CIS ship, and he placed this ship right here in the middle, well then when you bring up the range band, he's got a distance 1 to 5 bubble that you can't place any squadrons within that area. They can be placed outside that area. That's fine. So they could place their first ship, and then you could place your 2 scout squadrons. But if they also then placed like 2 squadrons out here after that, again, it's distance 1 to 5 from there. So then your new bubble would be from here. So if you had more squadrons of scout, like these Aether sprites here, let's say they each had scout, you would be able to put them next to your arcs, because again, that distance 1 to 5 restriction, you would be able to place them over here. So as you can see, that as your opponent starts placing down more things on the table, your benefit of being able to utilize hyperspace rings shrinks. So there is still some benefit of using hyperspace rings. It's great for, if you want to get your ARC 170s out into a position because they're so slow at speed 2. Maybe you're wanting to throw Aether sprites in a position because they're fast interceptors. It allows you to potentially, get them jumped out into attacking something faster. There's a variety of uses for rings, but not like every single squadron in your fleet. You want it really only the 2, 3, maybe at most 4. You wouldn't want all of your squadrons, for example, to be to have the scout mechanic, unless you're trying to go for a deployment advantage of placing down all of your squadrons before you're forced to place ships. So pros and cons to all these methods, of course. Okay, so we've covered that it's you do not need to be at distance 1 to 2 of a friendly ship. You can be placed beyond distance 1 to 5 of enemy. You need to be placed 1 to 5 of past enemy ships or squadrons, or beyond enemy ships or squadrons. Again, you have to be within the setup area, and you can place your scout squadrons in an opponent's deployment zone as long as, again, they don't have any ships or squadrons placed to prevent you from doing so. And again, you may deploy 2 squadrons of scouts before deploying your ships. Now, again, you still have to deploy 2 squadrons when you're choosing squadrons, and you could actually, mix and match the squadrons. right? Yes, you can mix and match. So you could choose, for example, a squadron without scout and a squadron with scout, and you could place a squadron with scout down. But again, the squadron without scout still would have to be at distance 1 to 2 of a ship. But if you wanted to mix and match, if you had a ship down and you wanted to do that, you could also do that as well. So I don't think I've missed anything else. But of course, if you think I missed something, if you have any questions about something, please be sure to leave a comment. Let me know. Appreciate you watching. And again, I'll catch you all next time.